Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. I am continuing with my spree of discussing subjects not specifically related to Gaza and not specifically related to the upcoming presidential election in the U.S. this coming November. Now, I will talk about the issue of climate change. Climate change is perhaps the single most difficult issue that we face. Why? Well, communism would be nice, or revolutionary socialism would be nice, whatever you want to call it. But if there is no planet, what is the point? We need to have a planet. I had a conversation with somebody on Facebook who believes that that we already have access to multi-dimensional portals. I have seen no evidence of that. That would be nice, that we could simply go into a portal, end up in some other dimension, and be saved from the consequences of our own misbehavior. But to the best of my knowledge, there is no such thing. If there are multi-dimensional portals, to my knowledge, we know nothing about them. And so we are stuck here, in my view. We have no place else to go. And if we want to blame someone, we should simply look into the mirror. This is a worldwide problem, but it primarily comes from the first world. Why? Because climate change is one of the things which created the first world. The Industrial Revolution, the harnessing of coal, the harnessing of oil, and other fuels that are very, very polluting, allowed the West, allowed the first world, allowed Europe, the United States, and other first world countries to grow at an astounding rate and to become extraordinarily wealthy. And as an American, I live in the wealthiest country in the world, although you would never know it, given the fact that we have such a tremendous disparity between the wealthy and the poor. And also given the fact that when you want to travel around in the US, we have a primitive system of transportation. Our railroads are like 100 years ago. Our airports might as well be 100 years ago. They are primitive. You travel to Europe, airports look nothing like the way they look right here in the US. That is something which many visitors, tourists, business travelers to the US immediately recognize as soon as they land at a major airport in the US. Where am I? Am I in the wealthiest country in the world? How could that possibly be? Yes, you are. Yes, you are. The question is, what are our priorities? Our priorities are not including, do not include increasing the welfare of the average citizen or the average tourist. Our priorities basically center on increasing the wealth of large corporations, of filling the pockets of fat cats. Those are our priorities. And so understandably, given that we are in the United States, the most capitalist country in the world, the beast of the first world. And the first world is the head of the capitalist world system. It is perhaps understandable, although quite sad, that the US basically is a second-rate country with respect to most things, including healthcare. I mean, the healthcare system in Cuba, a third world country, is better than the one that we have here in the US. Anybody who has traveled to any place else except the US knows that. When I have said that to my students, I would frequently get objections back when I was still teaching. They would say, how can you say that? Are you not patriotic? And I would say, have you ever been outside the US? Inevitably, the answer would be no, because if they had, they would not have asked me that question. They would know that what I was saying was true. So we are a wealthy country that looks like a third world country. In fact, even calling the US a third world country is in a way an insult to many third world countries, which have a much better quality of life than we have here in the US. Many, not all, but many. So this article is about climate change, sometimes referred to as global warming. Both terms are accurate. In some parts of the world, there is a warming, but in some parts of the world, there is a cooling. But overall, the globe is warming. So it is accurate to refer to global warming. But climate change is a more sophisticated, a more nuanced way of describing the world as we live in it in the 21st century. So let me put on my spectacles and read for you this article from Axios. I think you will find it interesting, although interesting in a very sad way. The article is dated today, written by Andrew Friedman, and it is titled Global Heat Record Broken for 12th Straight Month in May. And the subhead is Global Surface Air Temperature Anomalies. So here is the article. May was the 12th consecutive month to set a monthly global average temperature record and exceeded a key Paris temperature agreement target. Why it matters. The new data comes amid a slew of findings from climate monitoring groups released Wednesday, timed to coincide with a speech in New York by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. This is not the longest period on record of warmest months. That stands at 15 months. Well, we may get there, my own little comment. However, it is the longest streak of months to reach or exceed the Paris Agreement's aspirational target of limiting global warming to as low as 1.5 degrees to pre-industrial levels. That's not very good either, to be honest. The big picture. The news comes as parts of Asia, Mexico, and Central America, and now the southwestern US, have baked from withering heat waves, with all-time temperature records set across the world. Let me say that again. With all-time high temperature records set across the world. It also comes as actions to limit climate change have been crowded out on the international agenda amid geopolitical strife, economic concerns, multiple elections, and other factors. Upcoming G20 and G7 meetings loom large to generate momentum on major agenda items, like generating far more climate finance, leading up to COP29 in November. Zoom in. According to the European Commission's Copernicus Climate Change Service, May's global average surface temperature came in at 1.52 degrees Celsius, which is 2.73 degrees Fahrenheit, above pre-industrial levels. This year has featured temporary leaps above the 1.5 degree target, beyond which the effects of global warming could spell the demise of low-lying island nations and other highly vulnerable regions. Long-term warming that exceeds 1.5 degrees Celsius would also bring far more significant and potentially catastrophic consequences, even to wealthier, developed countries, studies have shown. Those effects include more rapid and sharper sea level rise, deadly extreme weather events, and other impacts. Yes, but the 11 months in a row that tied or broke the 1.5 degrees Celsius barrier did not yet constitute a breaching of the Paris target, since the benchmark refers to a timescale of multiple decades. Still, the fact that climate is now exceeding the target with greater regularity and is projected to continue doing so is a sign of the matter's urgency. In fact, Guterres noted in his speech that one of the reports released Wednesday finds that due to a rapidly depleting carbon budget, countries may have as few as 5 years at today's emissions levels before they guarantee the target will be exceeded on a long-term basis. By the numbers, Guterres also made his comments as a World Meteorological Organization report, along with the UK Met Office, projecting that during the next 5 years, there is an 80% likelihood that at least 1 year will feature an average global temperature at or above 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. As recently as 2015, the same organizations declared that there was, quote unquote, close to zero chance of one of the subsequent 5 years exceeding the 1.5 Celsius degree benchmark, the report noted. What they're saying: it is shocking, but not surprising, that we have reached this 12-month streak, said Carlo Buontempo, director of the Copernicus Climate Change Service, in a statement. While the sequence of record-breaking months will eventually be interrupted, the overall signature of climate change remains, and there is no sign in sight of a change in such a trend. Guterres, in his speech grounded in the new data, stated, "Our planet is trying to tell us something, but we don't seem to be listening." Indeed. That is the end of the article. Let's go back to my own words. I really don't know if there's anything more that I can add to it. It is tragic. It is not surprising, sadly. We have known that we are headed in this direction for quite a long time. There have been so many weather disasters all over the world. Every year seems to bring some new type of centuries-long climate emergency. Every year, every single year, some other type of centuries-long climate change emergency. And yet, we sit back and we do nothing about it at all. It is convenient in the US to blame the Republican Party, and certainly they deserve their share of blame, because many of them are literally climate change deniers. But it's not only the Republican Party. The Democratic Party has not been too helpful in that regard either. And it's not only the US. This is a global problem. India, for example, has argued against climate change measures in its own country based on the fact that the first world became successful by polluting the earth. And so why, they say, shouldn't we have the right to do so too? Obviously, I am framing it in a way that they would not have framed it, but essentially that is what India is saying. Well, if the West, if the first world got successful by polluting the earth, then we want to be successful too. And how else can we become successful except, I guess, by polluting the earth? And so there seems to be a lack of willingness, not only in the first world, but in many parts of the third world as well. But sadly, they are following the lead of the first world. The capitalist world system is not limited to the first world. It is headed by the first world, which in turn is headed by the US. But the third world, or many parts of the third world, are also doing their own part to add to this climate catastrophe that we are currently in. And I don't know what can be done to change it. We do not have any system of global governance. We do not have a world commonwealth. We do not have a global executive or a global legislature or a true, and emphasize true, global court, which could actually take action against these things that are happening all over the world, not only again in the first world. Although the first world set the agenda, we started it. Now, other countries, in an effort to compete with the first world, are trying to do their own share of damage. It is tragic. It is something that there is no solution for right now, because we have no way of making India, for example, making China, or for that matter, making the US conform to any kinds of targets, carbon targets. How in the world do you do that? It simply cannot be done in our present political climate. We have nothing of any sovereignty above the level of the nation state. And that indeed is our problem. We are living in a capitalist world system, not a communist or revolutionary socialist world system. And so the world is governed by fat cats, people who care about the next quarter, people who want to make a profit, people who do not care about their grandchildren or great-grandchildren, or do not care about you and I. And so that is the mess we are in. But we have no one to blame but ourselves. We are the ones who got us into that mess. And there is no one who can get us out of it except ourselves. But at least for the time being, it would appear that there is no way of doing that. Certainly, under the capitalist world system, there is no way of making a change, because profit will continue to be exalted as it was by Adam Smith, the founder of capitalism, arguably, even though he did not use that term. But he is the one who said that people are naturally selfish, which Roy Bhaskar, the founder of critical realism, called demi-reality. So to Adam Smith, demi-reality is natural, but it is the only nature that we have. There is nothing higher than that. In a way, Adam Smith has been echoed by Ayn Rand, who has said that people are selfish and that altruism is actually bad. So again, other than being pessimistic, which I am, I'm a perpetual pessimist and a cynic. I don't know what else to say, except please do your part. If you can pressure people to make any change, if you live in some part of the world that is contributing to the raising of carbon levels in our atmosphere, if you can pressure them to stop doing it. I do not think that would work. That is my pessimism. That is my cynicism. But trying can never hurt. It is the only thing that we can really do. Because However much we may want to see socialism or communism in the world today, it won't make a bit of difference if we have no globe to live on. For the time being, this has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D., for the Institute for Dialectical Meta-Realism. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.